It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back to your Tuesday morning. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Express on SABC3. Now, the massive earthquake that has struck Nepal and killed at least 2,500 people has also destroyed some of the country's most iconic landmarks. The 7.8 magnitude quake, the worst to hit Nepal in 80 years, devastated the capital of Kathmandu and caused avalanches on Mount Everest. Now, with us on the line this morning to give us some insight into the earthquake is retired geology professor Dave Reed. Professor, thank you once again for taking our call.
Well, thanks very much again.
Now, I've heard that the shockwave that was produced by the earthquake has been described as having the power of some 20 thermonuclear weapons, which I think is unimaginable to the average man. But can you give us some insight as to how and why this earthquake occurred?
Well, these earthquakes caused by, rocks breaking, or the rocks have already broken. They're moving again along those breaks. And, they break because they've been under great pressure. You've got two very big, large lumps of rock at continental scale banging into each other, a little bit like the Stormer's front row. So what happens is that if the fractures are vertical, the rocks on one side move up and they form the mountains, and on the other side they go down. So they actually form that low-lying, the North India plain, where the Ganges River, the sacred river of India, flows along.
Now, of course, I think residents of Nepal are still very jittery because of the aftershocks that are still occurring right now. So how long after an earthquake does one expect these aftershocks to carry on for?
Well, it depends on the size of the earthquake. And so this one's 7.8. Your aftershocks can be anything from that downwards. And past experience, these aftershocks can go on for, nearly a year. And the big ones are not as frequent as the smaller ones, but you basically have it's like a big lorry coming off the road and landing on top of your house. I mean, the big shock is the first hit.
Yes.
But after that, this thing is going to start sliding around and start to settle and maybe crush the rest of your house. So it's a situation that's been induced by the main shock. And so, yeah, they can actually be subject to this for over a year.
And with this happening, I can imagine that maybe some South Africans might have some nervous feelings because we had 3 minor tremors last year, 2 in the northwest and 1 in Gauteng. Do we have any reason to worry?
Well, it depends on where you are in South Africa, but those ones are probably associated with, our deep mining, which is pretty unique to South Africa. But it's not just the magnitude of the earthquake. If the infrastructure is not, well designed, you can have quite a lot of destruction with relatively small earthquakes. You take let's say the natural earthquake that occurred in 1969 near Toolbox series. I mean, that was about magnitude 6. Wow. So that's somewhere in the region of sort of nearly 100 times smaller than the one in Nepal. So, it's quite small and as earthquakes go. But if you've got a lot of sort of, poorly designed housing, you can have quite a lot of damage. So it really is our preparedness to deal with even small earthquakes.
Yeah. And in terms of preparedness, I mean, how would you advise people at home to take precautionary measures that they can at least implement at home in case of an earthquake?
Well, sometimes you inherit sort of a badly designed houses, so you basically going to have a collective awareness on just what can happen.
Yes.
You take, for example, Koeberg nuclear power. That was designed to withstand a magnitude 7 earthquake. But the likelihood of these earthquakes are pretty low compared to Nepal.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking our call this morning. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much for having me again. Cheers now.
Retired geology professor Dave Reed giving us his insights, of course, on the devastating earthquake that struck Nepal very recently. And indeed, to all of those people out there who have family and friends and those who lost their lives in the earthquake, we do send our thoughts and our prayers to you. It's time for us to catch up on the early morning headlines, and Leanne has those for you.